Here's the thing you need to understand about what happened this week, and stay with me here because the details matter. On Tuesday afternoon, Donald Trump held a cabinet meeting. Standard fare for any administration. The president sits at the head of a long table, surrounded by his appointees, cameras rolling, press pool documenting the proceedings for posterity. This is how executive branch governance has functioned for generations. But something happened during this particular cabinet meeting that hasn't happened before. Not once in the nearly decade-long relationship between Donald Trump and Fox News. Fox News cut away. They stopped broadcasting the President of the United States in the middle of his remarks. They went to commercial. When they came back, they were discussing an entirely different topic, as if the cabinet meeting had simply ceased to exist. Now, I want you to sit with that for a moment, because the significance of this cannot be overstated. Fox News has defended this man through 2 impeachments. They defended him through January 6th. They defended him through 34 felony convictions. They defended him through findings of sexual assault liability. They defended him through the theft of classified documents. They have constructed an alternate reality for their viewers, where every scandal was a hoax, every criticism was persecution, every failure was actually a victory. And on Tuesday, they looked at what was happening in that cabinet room, and they made an editorial decision that they could not show it to their audience. This wasn't Fox News protecting Donald Trump. This was Fox News protecting their viewers from Donald Trump. Because what was happening in that room was impossible to spin. Let me walk you through what actually occurred in that meeting, because the footage that did make it out is genuinely alarming, and I don't use that word casually. The president attempted to discuss economic policy. I use the word attempted deliberately. Here is his exact quote: "We're bringing back $400 billion, maybe $500 billion. Some say $600 billion from China, from Canada, from the European Union, which is basically Germany if you think about it. And nobody has ever seen numbers like this. The biggest numbers in history." Read that again. Those aren't policy positions. That's not even a distorted version of actual economic data. That is a man reaching for numbers that sound impressive while demonstrating no comprehension of what he's supposedly discussing. But the words were only part of it. Watch the footage. Watch how he gripped the edge of the table. Watch how he leaned forward, as though requiring the furniture for physical support. Watch the body language of his staff, Carolyn Levitt, Stephen Miller. Watch how they observed him with the focused attention of medical professionals monitoring a patient. And then watch how quickly they moved him out of that room when it was over. No questions from reporters. No impromptu remarks. No walking over to the press pool. His handlers extracted him from that space as rapidly as his diminished physical capacity would allow. Because they know. Every single person in that room knows. Here's what has become undeniable, and I want to be precise about the distinction I'm drawing. Donald Trump's staff is no longer serving him. They are handling him. Those are 2 very different things. Compare his public presence now to his first term. From 2017 to 2021, whatever your opinion of the man, he was ubiquitous. Daily press briefings. Hour-long impromptu sessions on the White House lawn. Standing in front of Marine One, shouting over the rotor wash, taking any question from any reporter. It was chaotic. It was often incoherent. But he was present. He was engaged. He was, for lack of a better term, there. Now examine his current public schedule. Rare appearances. Heavy teleprompter dependence for remarks he would have improvised 4 years ago. Only pre-approved questions. Restricted media access. And the moment anything deviates from the script, immediate extraction. Why? Because the people surrounding him have recognized an opportunity. Stephen Miller reportedly operates a private communication channel directly to Trump, feeding him information throughout the day, effectively creating a shadow power structure that circumvents the official White House chain of command. That's not staff work. That's a power grab by someone positioning themselves as the actual decision-maker while the nominal president deteriorates. Elon Musk publicly contradicts Trump's stated policies without consequence. J.D. Vance conducts interviews positioning himself as the calm, competent face of the administration, building his own brand for what comes next. These individuals are not serving Donald Trump's agenda. They are advancing their own agendas, enriching themselves, leveraging inside information for market advantage, and waiting for the inevitable moment when he is too diminished to stop them. Donald Trump has become a figurehead in his own administration. Everyone around him understands this. Now, I need to tell you about something that reveals more about Trump's psychological state than perhaps anything else this week. You may have seen reports about this, but I want to make sure you understand exactly what is happening. Donald Trump is currently withholding federal infrastructure funding. Specifically, he is blocking money for the Gateway Project, which is critical transportation infrastructure for the entire Northeast Corridor. His condition for releasing that funding? He wants his name placed on Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport and Penn Station in New York. I need you to read that again. The President of the United States is engaged in active blackmail against a sitting United States Senator, Chuck Schumer, demanding that public buildings be renamed in his honor as the price for releasing infrastructure funds that have already been appropriated by Congress. On one level, this is simply pathetic. It's the behavior of a profoundly insecure person who never received sufficient validation and now demands it through the exercise of governmental power. But it's actually much more significant than that, because this airport demand is not an isolated incident. It's part of a pattern. And when you examine that pattern, a very specific psychological picture emerges. This is a man in accelerating panic about how history will remember him. Consider the evidence. He renamed the Kennedy Center. It is now officially the John F. Kennedy and Donald J. Trump Center for the Performing Arts. He could not permit John F. Kennedy to have that single piece of cultural legacy without inserting himself alongside it. He has ordered construction of a massive arch in Washington, D.C., a literal monument to himself. Historians have noted the uncomfortable parallels to the monument building programs of Saddam Hussein in his later years, or Stalin's cult of personality projects as his health deteriorated. He's attempting to rename military bases, government buildings, any structure with federal funding attached. Why? Why this sudden, frantic obsession with putting his name on physical structures? Because history shows us something consistent about authoritarian leaders. When they sense the end approaching, whether political decline or physical decline, they accelerate their monument construction. They try to lock themselves into stone. Saddam Hussein's palace construction increased dramatically in the late 1990s as international sanctions isolated him. Stalin's self-glorification intensified as his paranoia and health worsened in his final years. It's a pattern. When authoritarians recognize they are losing control of their own narrative, they attempt to write it in marble. And here's where this becomes genuinely strange. This week, Donald Trump, unprompted, began posting on social media about whether he's going to heaven. I am not making this up. He wrote something to the effect of, "The nasty fake news keeps reporting that I said I'm not going to heaven." It was a joke, but they reported it seriously because they're terrible people who want to make me look bad. First observation, nobody was reporting that. No news organization was running stories about Trump's statements regarding his eternal destination. He raised this subject himself. He is the one who cannot stop thinking about it. Second observation, this is Donald Trump. A man who has never demonstrated genuine religious conviction, who could not name a single Bible verse when asked, who famously stated he has never asked God for forgiveness for anything. This man is now publicly fixating on divine judgment. That's not politics. That's psychology. That's a man confronting the reality of his own mortality and recognizing that no amount of public relations can alter what awaits him. There are reports from inside Mar-a-Lago that he has been having conversations about his funeral arrangements, about how he will be remembered, about what will be said about him after he's gone. He is attempting to negotiate with history in real time, and he is losing that negotiation badly. Here's the most revealing symbol of Trump's legacy, panic. After forcing his name onto the Kennedy Center, after holding a ceremony to celebrate the renaming, after standing there photographing himself at this moment he believed was triumphant, the Kennedy Center shut down. Just closed. Indefinitely. The official explanation involves renovations and reorganization. But let's be clear about what actually occurred. Donald Trump could not tolerate the comparison. His name on the same building as John F. Kennedy, a president remembered for eloquence, for vision, for sacrifice. He could not risk that the building might not provide him the worship he demands. So he closed it. He took his ball and went home. And here's my prediction, and you can hold me to this. Within 10 years, every monument Trump is currently constructing will become a source of national embarrassment. Hotels will remove the Trump name to avoid boycotts. Many already have. Buildings will be quietly renamed. The arch will be demolished or repurposed. His own children will attempt to distance themselves from the brand. Some already are. The monuments he is so desperately erecting will not protect his legacy. They will become sites of mockery. People will visit Trump's folly the way they visit Confederate monuments today, not to honor them, but to remember what the nation eventually rejected. Donald Trump understands this on some level, and it is destroying him. But here's what makes this truly dangerous, and why you need to understand the connection between these two phenomena. At the exact moment Trump is frantically constructing monuments to himself, his administration is systematically destroying monuments to others. Specifically, they are erasing Black history. This began immediately. Day one of the second term. The elimination of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs across the federal government. The removal of materials from Smithsonian collections. Mandated changes to school curricula, requiring the removal of discussions about slavery, Jim Crow laws, and the civil rights movement from American history education. Remember the Enola Gay incident? They ran a keyword search for the word gay in federal museum databases and began deleting entries. They removed an exhibit about the aircraft that delivered the atomic bomb at Hiroshima because the word gay appeared in the plane's name. That's the level of ideological purging we're discussing. But here's what I need you to understand. The obvious interpretation is that this is simply racism. Trump is a racist. His administration contains white supremacists. They don't want Black stories told. That's accurate, but it's incomplete. The reason they're erasing Black history isn't merely hatred. It's strategy. Fascism requires historical amnesia. Authoritarian governance cannot survive a population that remembers how authoritarianism functions, what it looks like in practice, who it targets, and how it has been successfully resisted. There was a conversation recently between Andrew Schultz and Charlemagne the God that captured this perfectly. Schultz, who had defended Trump, who had told people they were overreacting, who had made excuses for the behavior, was now expressing shock at what he was witnessing. "I never thought I'd see this in America," he said. People being shot in the streets by federal agents. Families being torn apart. Armed men with badges hunting people down. And Charlemagne said something so simple and so devastating in response. "You never thought it would happen to white people. Because here's the historical reality. This is American history. This has always been American history. Where do you think American policing originated? Slave patrols. Armed men granted governmental authority to hunt Black people, return them to slavery, and terrorize communities into submission. That is the origin of American law enforcement. The ICE raids occurring right now, agents breaking into homes without warrants, families torn apart, people disappeared into detention facilities. That's not new. That's a reproduction of the Fugitive Slave Act. Federal agents granted authority to hunt human beings across state lines and drag them back into bondage. The militarized police beating protesters, the government surveillance of activists, the criminalization of people helping each other. Black Americans have experienced this for 400 years. Indigenous Americans wrote the original text in their own blood. What's happening now isn't Trump inventing American authoritarianism. It's American authoritarianism finally reaching everyone, and that's precisely why they must erase Black history. Because if Americans understood that history, they would immediately recognize what's happening now. If we knew Frederick Douglass, we would know how to speak truth to power when power demands silence. If we knew Harriet Tubman, we would know how to construct underground networks of resistance. If we knew Ida B. Wells, we would know how to document atrocities and force a nation to confront them. If we knew Fannie Lou Hamer, We would know how to organize at the local level against corrupt systems. If we knew the Black Panther Party's free breakfast program, we would know how to build community mutual aid networks that reduce dependence on a government that wants us helpless. If we knew the labor movements led by Philip Randolph and Bayard Rustin, they're not erasing history because they hate the past. They're erasing it because they fear an informed future. They are terrified that if you understood how Black Americans resisted slavery, Jim Crow, and mass incarceration, you would know exactly how to resist them. This is why Trump's monument building and history erasing are two sides of the same authoritarian coin. Build monuments to the regime. Erase monuments to resistance. Control the past. Control the future. Except it's not going to work. Because here's what Donald Trump cannot seem to grasp. His legacy is already written. It's finished. It's done. No quantity of marble, no renamed airports, no triumphal arches will alter it. January 6th will be studied for centuries. Not as a patriotic demonstration. Not as a protest that exceeded its boundaries. As a fascist insurrection, an attempt to overthrow the government by a president who refused to accept electoral defeat. His face will appear next to the word insurrection in textbooks forever. His COVID response, suggesting people inject bleach. Holding packed rallies while hundreds of thousands died. Dismantling pandemic preparedness infrastructure because Obama had built it. That's his legacy. His family separation policy. Children in cages. Toddlers forced to represent themselves in immigration court. Thousands of families permanently shattered. That's his legacy. 2 impeachments. 34 felony convictions. Liable for sexual assault. Fraud convictions. Theft of classified documents. That's his legacy. Future generations won't ask, was Trump a great president? They'll ask, how did Americans fall for this twice? His name won't signify greatness. It will signify American decline, democratic erosion. The con artist who nearly destroyed the republic. Every monument he builds is something to tear down. Every name he places on a building is something to scrub off. Every arch he orders is something future generations will demolish. That's his actual legacy. And he cannot change it. But here's what the real monument to this era will be. It won't be his arch. It won't be his renamed airport. It will be the resistance. The millions of women who marched the day after his first inauguration and never stopped marching. The sanctuary cities that refused to become instruments of his deportation apparatus. The election workers who protected democracy while he sent mobs after them. The journalists he labeled enemies of the people who continued reporting the truth. The lawyers who filed lawsuit after lawsuit to block his worst impulses. The mutual aid networks that fed people when his government shut down. The young people organizing climate protests while he gutted environmental protections. The families torn apart by ICE who are still fighting to be reunited. The trans kids he tried to erase who refused to disappear. That's the monument. That's what will be taught. Not his buildings. Not his speeches. But the fact that millions of Americans looked at his authoritarianism and said no. Not here. Not us. Not ever. The monument to this era is every person who resisted. And that monument is being constructed right now, in real time, by all of us. Which brings me back to Chuck Schumer and that airport naming demand. Senator Schumer, you have one job right now. One very simple job. Do not negotiate with extortion. Do not build monuments to authoritarians. Do not provide this man another piece of legacy preservation while he actively dismantles American democracy. The answer to Trump's blackmail is simple, no. Build the Gateway Project because it's critical infrastructure. Name it after the workers who constructed it, not the would-be dictator who held it hostage. This is a test, not just for Schumer, for every Democrat who claims to be part of the opposition. Are you going to actually resist? Or are you going to make deals with fascism because it's the path of least resistance? But more than that, this is a test for all of us. Because Trump's team is counting on exhaustion, they're counting on amnesia. They're counting on us, forgetting how we got here and who showed us the way out before. So here's what we do. We document everything. Every abuse. Every lie. Every crime. We create the record they're trying to destroy. We learn the history they're trying to hide. Read Frederick Douglass. Read James Baldwin. Read Ida B. Wells. Learn the strategies of resistance they don't want you to know. And we build the counter-narrative right now while they're still in power, so that when this era ends, and it will end, the history that gets taught is the true one. Not Trump's fantasy. Not his monuments. The real story of what happened and how we survived it. They want us to forget. Our job is to remember everything. Senator Schumer, no airports. No monuments. No deals with autocrats. To everyone else, keep fighting. Keep documenting. Keep learning the history they're trying to erase. They are counting on your silence. Don't give it to them.